Greetings. My name is Etshlalom, and I'm delighted to lend my voice to this wonderful project of many voices, one Haggadah. I'd like to take a look at a passage that is well known, both ceremonially and also musically, that takes place relatively early in the evening. And it is the paragraph that we know as Vihi She'amda, has an old famous tune, a more modern, very uplifting tune. But as often the case with well-known paragraphs and festively festooned paragraphs, it is not necessarily well understood. Let's take a look at the paragraph itself. I'll explain why I refer to it as festively festooned, because as all of the instructions, including this one here, indicates, at this point in the Seder, we cover up the matzot. The matzot are displayed when we're telling the story, and we lift up the wine because this is a time that we are singing. Wine is used for shirah, and the matzah is used for sipur, for telling the story. We lift up the wine and we sing or say, V'hi she'amda la'avotenu v'lanu. This is what stood for our ancestors and for us. What's the this? That's the problem. It's only not only one person stood over us to try to destroy us. In every generation, they stand on top of us to destroy us. They stand over us to destroy us. And God saves us from their hands. Now, unfortunately, it's all too easy to identify who the they is here. And in every generation, we've been sadly able to point at least one finger in the direction of a tyrant, a dictator, a belligerent enemy who thinks that he has the wherewithal and the ability to destroy us, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu mi'adam. But let's take a look at what the reference here is. What is it that stood for our ancestors and us? Because the answer is that the previous paragraph is linked here. And the previous paragraph begins as follows. Baruch shomer avtachato liYisrael baruch hu. Blessed is he who keeps his promise to Am Yisrael. Shakadosh Baruch Hu, and now I'm going to use not the version we have here, but the more popular version among the Rishonim, the version of the Rambam and the Shibbolei Alek and many others. Shakadosh Baruch Hu mechashev et haketz. God is constantly calculating the end of time. La'asot k'mo shemar l'Avraham Avinu brit b'dam tarim. To fulfill that which he promised to Abraham in the covenant between the pieces, Shenemar, and then we're going to look at the Brit B'dam Tarim in its original, in the Haggadah, in the text of Breshit. Here we are, and that is the promise that Hashem made to Abraham. Vayomer le'Avram, Yadoa teda ki ger yezaracha. And the reason that I'm going back to Breshit is because in our Haggadah we only quote the first two verses, but we have to see the whole picture. You should know for sure that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. And those people, wherever they are, will enslave them and oppress them for 400 years. The nation that oppresses them or that enslaves them, I will judge. And then they, your descendants, will leave with great wealth. Essentially, Abraham, what happened to you in Mitzrayim, where you suffered when Sarah was taken by Paro, and then you were enriched, and then you left with all those riches. See the Ramban at the beginning of Lech Lecha. You will come to your ancestors in peace. In other words, this will not happen in your lifetime. You will die at a good old age. The fourth generation will return to here. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that Abraham will only see 3 generations, a son and a grandson, and after he dies, the grandchild will already return, the great-grandchild will return here? Well, that hardly makes for 400 years. There's a lot of difficulties in this passage with the time frame, and for that, the shiurim that I gave over the past couple of years in the Book of the Year series at our shul, and the context of Chayei Avraham, the life of Abraham, we spent an entire shiur talking about this issue of the time. Kilo shalem avon ha'emori adheina, and the fourth generation will return because the sin of the Amorite will not be complete till that time. In other words, there is a moral accounting that God holds to himself to not exile a people from their land until they are fully culpable and fully guilty. And God knows that only when the time has come for Am Yisrael to return, for Avram's descendants to return to the land, will be at the same time that the locals will have sinned enough that they will deserve expulsion as we are commanded. So the question is, what's the connection between this and V'hisha Amda? The answer is that's exactly what the line says. And we'll take a look at it again in the Haggadah. Baruch shomer avtachato. Baruch shomer avtachato liYisrael Baruch Hu. Shakadosh Baruch Hu mechashev et haketz. God is constantly calculating the end to fulfill that which he promised to Avraham Avinu and the brit that we just saw. What does that mean? It means that the brit that we just saw, that we conventionally think only refers to the experience in Egypt, is actually a brit about the ongoing cycle of Jewish history. Avraham, you should know that your descendants at all sorts of different times in history are going to be strangers. Sometimes they'll be enslaved, sometimes they'll be even oppressed. That may even last a long time. And I will come and judge the nation that oppresses them, that persecutes them, that enslaves them, and they will leave sometimes with great wealth. The way it's played out in Jewish history, some of these components have happened, not all of them. Even in Yetziat Mitzrayim, it didn't happen. We weren't there for 400 years, and we were surely not enslaved for 400 years. But the point is that the Haggadah is now commenting on Breshit. The Haggadah, the author of the Haggadah, with the paragraph V'hisha Amda, is pointing out that this brit that Hashem made with Avraham was not a one-time event. It was a brit of all of Jewish history. And this is a turning point in the Seder, because at this point we say the story we're about to tell about Yetziat Mitzrayim is not a one-time story that happened them there to them there, but rather it's a story that continues to happen to the Jewish people throughout history. And that's why a wise and experienced leader of the Seder will also introduce other components of Jewish history all the way till our day that echo the teachings in the Haggadah and that echo Brit Bar-Atarim, so that we understand that we're not celebrating an event that happened 3,000 plus years ago. We're celebrating that as the paradigm for the events that have taken place throughout Jewish history. And with all of those enemies who stood over us to destroy us, they are no longer here. And we are still here, and we are here to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu and thank him for the miracle of Jewish eternal history.